Okay, hello and welcome back to part two of chapter two. All right, so we left off at the TPM. Okay, so many motherboards contain a chip called the TPM. So please write this down. TPM stands for Trusted Platform Module Chip, and the BitLocker encryptions, starting with Windows 7, is designed to work with this chip. The chip holds the BitLocker encryption key, is also called the startup key. The TPM chip can also be used with encryption software other than the BitLocker that may be installed on the hard drive. So BitLocker is when you want to encrypt your whole hard drive. So if you want to encrypt the whole hard drive, you're afraid if you're moving it from one place to another, you want to make sure if somebody takes your hard drive and does not have access to it, you got to turn on the TPM. You have to have that TPM chip on the motherboard to enable you to encrypt your full hard drive. All right. Also, EYF, you can support virtualization with your with EUI with the BIOS. Virtualization is you can create multiple VMs, but we'll do that later on this semester. All right. We talked about device drivers. Remember, device drivers are small programs that are stored on the motherboard that the operating system, such as Windows, Linux, or communicate with a specific hardwares. So, like I said, for example, your printer, your network port on the motherboard, or the video card, the CD or the DVD, they all require a device driver, which is a program to run them. All right, I want to get to flashing the BIOS or updating the motherboard firmware. So before we get to that, so when you want to update your motherboard or drivers or even the motherboard itself, so when you want to update the firmware, let's talk about that. So flashing means you want to update the UEFI or the BIOS. So for what are the good reasons that you want to do this? The system hangs at odd times. So write this down. That's a good example to do that. The system hangs at odd times or during the boot. Some motherboard functions have stopped working or causing problems. For example, the motherboard video port is not working. You get errors when you're trying to install the new system hardware. You want to incorporate some new features or a new component on the motherboard. Um, Otherwise, you don't really. So write these points down. Otherwise, don't upgrade the firmware unless you have one of these problems or one of these issues. Don't just upgrade it because there's something new. Because if you run into problems, it can give you a headache. Um, so a BIOS upgrade might be required before you can upgrade your processor. So just remember that. All right, now to actually flash or upgrade, we use the word flash, the BIOS. First of all, you could do it from, okay, write these down too. You could do it by downloading and updating an update within the BIOS UEFI setup. So you can go right into the BIOS and download an update from there. You can download from a USB drive as long as it has a setup automatically. So you can go to the manufacturers, download it on a USB and run it from there. Run the Express BIOS UEFI update. Okay, like I said to you also, number 4, do not update the firm without any good reason. And number 5, make sure you back up first, back up all your data. You don't know what's going to happen. Select the correct update file. Don't interrupt the update. Well, let me go back. If you messed up for whatever reason, you can use the backflash or use a bootable media to restore the defaults. I mean, if that ever happens, and for whatever reason something went wrong, and let's say you interrupted the update, because now you're going to have a mess. So if somebody came in and turned your computer off while the update is happening, you're going to have a big problem. That means you have to clear everything and go back from your system will never boot. All right, so sometimes you may have to use jumpers to clear the BIOS. So let's say you set up a password and you forgot what that password is, or you bought a machine and the machine has a BIOS password. So you probably have to use jumpers to clear. So jumpers will configure, do recovery depending on what the jumpers are. Sometimes you may have to remove the battery for that. What else do you need to know? Okay, so let's say you want to update your motherboard. So for desktop, it is best to follow the following, I guess, well, 16 steps when you want to install the motherboard. So you can follow these step by step. I'm not going to have you write them down. They're pretty straightforward, I think. You just got to be very careful and make sure that you have your wristband there connected to a piece of metal so that you are always grounded, right? To avoid electrostatic discharge. Remember that. Now, when it comes to laptops, you most likely you are going to have to take the whole thing apart. So it better be a very expensive laptop, because if you're going to take it to a shop and you're charging somebody $100 an hour, and it's probably going to take a couple of hours plus the parts. So it might be a little bit too expensive if the motherboard on the laptop is shot. So you really have to decide. But anyway, so you could just like we went over earlier from the last chapter, you just be very careful when you're moving the parts out and reinstalling them. All right, that's it. That's pretty short. This is completes chapter 1. So write down the notes that I asked you to write down and upload them as homework. Remember, please, I would be doing a disservice to you if I told you not to read the chapter. So please read the chapters. And again, if you are too lazy to read, you can always click right here and it reads it for you. But be there listening and reading after it. So this way, and if you think that you need more notes to take, definitely do that as well. All right, I'll see you on the next chapter then.